All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our October Morning on the Porch. We are really excited to share what we have to share about imagination and igniting campers' imagination. But before we get to that and before we get to our two hosts, I want to just go over some housekeeping rules. So as you see in the bar below, there is a chat. We will be utilizing the chat during our conversation today, but also that chat is for Q&A at the end of our conversation. So just be ready to put any questions in, or when we ask our participants to say stuff in the chat, just remember that we'll be asking for that later on. And just to let everyone know, this is a recorded webinar, so we will have it on our website. So if you want to watch back or send to a friend, you will have access to that. And we will send you an email once we're done with our Morning on the Porch. But let me introduce myself. I'm Savannah Lawrence, or Popcorn. I'm the Administrative Director at Yosemite Sierra Summer Camp, and I am excited to hand it over to our two hosts for today's Morning on the Porch. So we have Jessica Peterson, the Associate Director of Yosemite Sierra Summer Camp, and then Sarah Coolias, Owner and Executive Director of Yosemite Sierra Summer Camp. So we are going to get started. So here we go. Just give me 1 second. All right, there you go, ladies. Looking good.
Good morning. Good morning.
You look great.
Thank you. We thought we'd ride that imagination wave and put on a little costume this morning and have fun with it. So welcome. Mornings on the Porch is a monthly parent podcast or webinar that we do for our camp parents, either those returners who've been with us a while, or brand new parents, or those who are considering YSSC as a camp experience for their children. And we'll cover various topics each month throughout the year, maybe seasonal like today's. And then in the winter and spring, we'll talk more about aspects of our program and how to get your camper ready for the summer. So thanks to those of you who are faithful attenders, and welcome to those who are brand new to us. I hope this is a really fun topic for us today.
Yeah. Well, as groovy as I think we look, these are costumes because it is nearly Halloween.
Yay.
It feels like, some years it feels like it sneaks up on you, and then other years it feels like it comes it's right around the corner. But I'm excited. I'm starting to see, I'm gonna, so you can see everyone.
There you go. Now I see you.
So that we live close by to a main strip of where kids come and do trick-or-treating. And so, I've been waiting even just a week ago. I drove down and saw maybe just a couple of houses decorated, but yesterday I drove down the street, and I kid you not, there were like 3 different houses that had those big like balloon blow up companies that were painting the town and getting all the houses all ready, big blow up cats and things. So I'm excited. It's starting to fill out. What about
Very
you?
festive.
Yeah.
I have noticed, and I noticed this a little bit last year, but the trend definitely is amping up, and that is decorating your car, like the little witches, toes hanging out of the trunk. Or what I'm seeing a lot more this year is skeletons, strapped to the outside of cars. And so, in fact, you and I together saw, was on top of a VW bus where they had their surfboard strapped. There was, a skeleton on that surfboard, kind of paddling through the street. And so anyway, I love the imagination that is showing up for so many households.
Yes, yeah. I like the skeletons. The one where it's like the partial hand peeking out the trunk.
I don't like the scary stuff as much.
Yeah.
I like the creative stuff.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, we actually, it's funny that you said that the skeletons have been, I feel like, taking on a more prominent role this year.
Yeah.
One of my favorites is a house just a couple doors down from us, and they have like a full skeleton still life in their front yard. So they've got this little skeleton dog with a whole leash that's attached to a little skeleton person and a little Hobie hat, and it's like a full still life. And it's like the imagination to not just put a spider on the door or whatever,
Sure.
It's great. It's great. But the imagination that people have with their decor.
Telling a story.
Yes, I love it. And it truly does remind me of some of the imagination that we have embedded into our program at YSSC. Imagination has always been such an important topic, and actually not just, although it is very fun. So it's so much fun, and that's very important. But there's also some deep roots underneath why we do imagination. And so this morning, as we come up on our Halloween season, we're going to be talking about imagination, some of the important why behind it, some of the how that we do it at camp, and how you can do it at home too. And so we're going to dive into some super serious research behind imagination. Sarah, our salsa, is always our research queen, and so she's going to tell us a little bit about it. But you might not be able to take us very seriously with some of these costumes on. So your hat looks amazing, but it also might be a little heavy.
Is it distracting
Yes,
to you?
yes.
Yeah, actually, I appreciate that. Well, with your permission,
Yes.
I'm gonna.
Yeah, we can
like,
robe just a little
There
bit.
we go. Okay, here we are.
I'll keep my kerchief on.
Okay, I do like that.
Yeah.
Such a sailor. Well, it's true. At Yosemite Sierra, we are sometimes overly intentional with how we design our program, and I do think that within Yosemite Sierra Summer Camp's mission, which is to create experiences that help children grow in character, skills, relationships, and faith. Imaginative play really falls into that building skills category. As Sprinkles or Jessica mentioned, I am sort of a research nerd, addict, as it were. And, the research around the importance of building imagination in children and the importance of imaginative play for youth development really points to the fact that imaginative play fosters really key, crucial social skills. And when we talk about skills at camp, yeah, they are archery skills, but a lot of them are social and life skills, which then can be transferred as kids go home and applied to, the years ahead and the different environments they're in. So the research is pretty clear. Imaginative play does foster communication skills. How would I say it in that setting, or if I was that person or playing that role, or if it went differently? How would I say it? It fosters empathy. What would it be like if I imagined being in that person's shoes? What would it be like to be the new camper? What it would be like to be the older camper? What it would be like to be a camper who is making a friend for the first time. And as we really conceive of what it's like to be in someone else's shoes, what an essential, important part of skill building for kids right now. Perspective taking is another key skill that imaginative play helps. Oh, if I'm looking at it from that point of view, I can understand why that person might feel strongly about that or reacted that way. Additionally, oh my goodness, problem solving, right? Well, that didn't work. Can I imagine doing it differently so it might work better, right? That bounce back. And certainly just developing a more robust creative muscle, just that creativity of like imagining things in a whole new way. I do think that imaginative play also really can build resilience, that problem solving piece and that feeling of, well, if it didn't work that way, but if I keep trying, even if it is, let's go back to archery skills. If I arch a little bit different, if my elbow's a little bit higher, and certainly being coached by staff,
that helps.
I'm going to imagine hitting that bullseye and, or that balloon full of flour or whatever we're aiming at. That makes it so fun. Imagining a different outcome really can build resilience in kids, but also adults. I do that fairly often myself. And I do want to mention this morning, in addition to those gifts of imaginative play, for some of our campers, it carries an extra gift. We have a nonprofit called Star Rock Ministries. It's named after Star Rock, which is where our beloved campfire site is. It's on a huge slab of granite that looks out over the canyon. And as the stars pop out at night and we're singing around the campfire and making s'mores, it really grows to be a favorite place and a sacred space at camp. So Star Rock Ministries is an organization that designs programs and raises funds to provide whole child camp experiences, the kind that grow character skills, relationships, and faith for children from underserved, under-resourced neighborhoods. These programs happen in California, but also in Texas. There's a variety of them. And I can't even count the number of times either campers or the volunteers or staff that come with them from their year-round organizations will say, Sprinkles, Salsa, thank you so much for helping our children use their imagination and play. For this 1 week a year, they get to just be kids. I do think for kids who hold weighty lives, who maybe carry a lot of pressure, maybe have, had challenges that are out of their control. Man, the opportunity just to imagine there's someone else, that opportunity to be a kid does bring them to a mindful space and kind of give them a little respite. Yeah.
Well, you know what, it actually reminds me, you perfectly teeing up a Albert Einstein quote that I brought.
Oh, good.
Albert Einstein says, imagination is more important than knowledge. For knowledge is limited to all we now know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world and all there ever will be to know and understand.
Wow.
Yeah. And as I read that, I'm also, you're the research queen. I'm the queen of finding very rich and deep meaning in things.
Yes, you are.
So forgive me for going deep on a Halloween webinar, but man, as I read that, it sounds like hope. Our imagination gives us the opportunity to hope for what we don't currently see before us, whether it's, oh man, perhaps next year I will be able to make better friends, or next time I come to that group or that event, I might find a friend there, or hope, perhaps next time there will be a better outcome. Perhaps if I change the way that I approach this or my mindset around it, it could be different. And it sounds honestly like the hope of perhaps God will meet me in that space. There is that hopefulness piece that imagination actually fosters in us. So I love that about imagination.
Oh, I really appreciate that a lot. And along with that piece is that imagination isn't dependent on what's around me. It's not dependent on what people do or say. It's something that even young children and medium children and old children and grown-ups, it's only dependent on what's within us.
Right.
And so there's a lot of agency around that, I think. It's only dependent on what I can generate, and feeling kind of powerful around that. I can create it. It's not dependent on others. Especially for kids, there's so much that is dependent on others.
Right.
How good to have that piece. That's my muscle.
Right.
I get to feed my soul in that way.
Yeah. That's so good. Well, we could talk about the power of imagination and the importance all day long. But man, with so many important whys behind imagination, there's no wonder that we utilize it so much at camp. And so, there's lots of ways that we engage, your child's imagination at camp. But there's even some ways that we do it long before they even arrive at camp. And one of those things is surrounding our theme. And so we invite invite our kids in the spring to vote on a theme that will kind of color and flavor camp throughout all of summer. And so we bother to do a theme because of the way that it engages kids' imagination. Our staff even come away after a summer going, wow, I engaged my creativity and imagination in a totally different way. And so that theme really invites our kids to engage in imaginative play, and they actually get to start it before they even arrive at camp.
Yeah, that's a great one. So be on the lookout this spring. Because we'll be offering registered campers 3 different themes to choose from, and they get to vote on what we're going to build the summer around. So super fun. Yeah. I think YSSC has had this long history in its 50 years of having characters just show up, walk-on characters, whether it's at a mealtime or a campfire or walking into flag raising and kind of kicking off the day to say, hey, join me in this imaginative space. And for those of you who knew and don't know this yet, everybody at camp, all the staff at camp have a nickname. It helps campers kind of transport to a different place that's different than home. So I am Salsa, due to my passionate love of Mexican food. Sprinkles is Sprinkles. But to know that my counselor's name is Ferrari or Cupstack, or my ski boat driver is Root, or Pepto and El Dorado are leading Bible study this morning. Nicknames have been just a really, really favorite aspect of camp for campers and for staff.
Yeah.
What are some other ways it's embedded at camp?
So I mean, we could probably walk through the whole day and talk about different ways, but we have Bible study each day, most days of our session, and kids get the opportunity to perhaps act out a Bible story, where they get to imagine themselves or imagine their cabin mates as part of the story and what it would sound like to be part of that story. What would it smell like? What would it look like? To really imagine themselves in, and like you said, in part of that research, that really develops that empathy piece. And so we're actually, developing skills and character all alongside it. But I love getting to walk through camp during discovery time and see different cabin groups engaging it in different ways, and even the staff's imagination. How do I bring this to life? How do I make this story meaningful for my 8-year-old cabin as well as my 16-year-old cabin later down the road? So discovery time is a blast for imagination too.
It is. Another tradition at YSCC is our classic adventure games or night games. Whether it's off-site at what we call Uzumati or outpost, or it's on-site engaging a big group of kids in a storyline where they become a character and they're interacting with staff who are various characters. I'm always delighted and floored, frankly, that campers can just throw themselves so wholeheartedly into imaginative play. And they'll go for it. They'll just, immediately start interacting with a staff member who's dressed as a cowboy, or who is playing the role of an elderly person with a walker, or who is dressed like an alien, and they'll just dive in and be with them in that space. Even I'm always really touched, the campers with Star Up Ministries who don't always get to play silly games. Even the 16, 17, sometimes 18-year-olds won't hesitate to put on a hat and to dive into that imaginative play in such a childlike way. It really is. Well, I guess it's hopeful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And what I love is we have such a spectrum. You might be sitting at home thinking, okay, I don't have a bunch of rad, cool college students to run around in costumes and put this on, and certainly my kid would just totally laugh at me if I did that or something, which I would challenge you might be surprised. Halloween might be the perfect time.
Yeah.
Try out that costume you've been wanting to, but But there's also aspects of our program that taps into this that actually, should feel so accessible to, practicing this at home. And we can, segue into that in just a moment. But I want to touch on the article that you had sent me, and some of the research for this talked about the power of imagination, of course, and specifically daydreaming, and the gift that daydreaming can give to our kids in creating this mental creative world. And part of that is having the pace of slowing down and creating a space where kids could actually be a little bored.
Bring the boredom.
Bring the power boredom, because the boredom actually opens up the space for them to start developing that internal world. And so, one of the times that we do that throughout the day after lunch, we have a kind of a nap time, a downtime, where kids get to settle for about 30 to 45 minutes and recharge, whether it's taking a nap, reading a book, or daydreaming and lying on their bunk and getting a little bit of R&R before they jump back into the day. And that's something that is totally doable at home, even on a car ride. You've got a 20-minute car ride. All right, I'm going to play some epic, music score. Why don't you guys come up with some story and we can share at the end of the drive or something like that. So there's lots of different ways, if you don't find yourself surrounded by a bunch of rad college students that want to put on a whole adventure game.
That's good. That's good. I think also just the environment of camp. Well, we've got activities like skit nights and crafts, to really help kids step into a creative space that maybe they don't always get to go to. How many campers will go, oh, I don't like crafts, I'm not very artsy. Oh, but come and see. Come and see just where your mind will go and what you will create. I had a camper last summer. I think he was about 11, 12, and he came to show me what he had made. And he was like, Salsa, I usually don't like this kind of stuff, but this was really fun. And I love that he identified it with fun. And I not just like something I had to do. And I said, will you promise me that when you go home, that sometimes you'll give yourself the opportunity to create some new things? And he's like, well, I'll try. I'm not very good. And I held up his beautiful creation and I said, you are really good. Look what you made. So I think just, maybe something that they wouldn't do in regular life, but hey, come to crafts and let's make something together.
Yes. Yeah. And that's part of the gift of camp too, is trying out new things or things that feel unfamiliar. And then, the encouragement to try that back at home. So there are probably lots of ways that you guys, our camp families, have come to develop imagination at home. So, as you are listening to us talk about, we're going to talk about some ways that you can develop imagination at home and bring this, into your day-to-day life. But if you guys have great ideas, we'd love to hear them. Why don't you pop them in the chat? So we mentioned, Popcorn mentioned that we might have you interact a little bit on the chat. So if you have ideas as to how you've implemented some of this imaginative play at home, put those in the chat, and Sarah will kind of share a couple of her ideas as well as you do that.
Well, Halloween for my family was always a favorite and frankly a wholesome and silly time of the year. And growing up, we sort of had this, my parents, I think we didn't know it was a requirement, but I think it is that we always made homemade costumes. We might buy a piece of a costume, but it was always make your own. And I continued that. My husband and I continued that very much with our own kids. And I was always dazzled with the ideas they would come up with a cardboard box. I could be R2D2. Or, with, I remember in middle school, my middle son was a laundry basket. He did destroy his own laundry basket so he could wear it.
His costume was laundry basket.
Yes. So he cut leg holes in that laundry basket and he put it on himself and he put suspenders on. He filled it with real dirty laundry. The underwear part got the big hit, and then he had like fabric softener sheets, and then he took the Tide with him, which then never came home from that day of school. But what a delight. And so I think, when we can urge our children to create a homemade and clever Halloween costume, and we certainly can help them. Another one was a big long, it was kind of a hand-me-down, like it looked like a military coat. And it had, we added little gold stripes, or I guess stripes, and then taped light bulbs to it. And that was General Electric. So, there's just all kinds of spoofy things.
Yes.
I love homemade costumes.
Yes, it's so good. That was my home as well.
Yeah.
So my mom is an incredible sewer. And she would help make us these wonderful costumes. And then the best part was after, my sister would wear them, and then a few years later I would wear them, and we'd pass them around, and then maybe some friends would wear them the next year. Then they would go into a costume box, and at home we had a costume box. And later down the road, when I actually worked quite a few years ago at day camp, I got to start pulling those out. We have our Emerald Cove day camp in San Juan Capistrano. So I got to start pulling those out and bring them as costumes to camp. And people were like, "Where did you get that incredible star costume?" And I'm like, "My mom made it for me. Thank you."
Oh, I like it so fit you.
Yeah, it does. It does. It just almost just now on my head, but
that's so good.
Yeah,
So naming that costume box idea, that was great. My youngest is a sophomore in college right now, and she was home. She did a drive-by last weekend for a few hours. And as she left, she went with an armload of costumes from the costume box, because man, you really need those at college, right?
Yes,
right.
Very important.
Very important. Yeah. Some other ways, I think to, at home is always so fun, is to, when it's time to give a gift to a friend, to actually have the child imagine what that friend will love, and have that, have your kiddos really help decide what gift, to take to that friend. I always appreciate. And and a favorite thing is, and mostly maybe when they're younger, as we're reading books together, is have them act out a scene. Like, wow, that would have been crazy. What do you think that would have looked like? And have them hop up and act it out. I think that's always just a fun way to make it real.
Yeah. And as we come up on, the holidays, certainly Halloween, and yet also, heading into Thanksgiving and then Christmas, lots of great opportunities for kids to hand make decorations. Whether it's, snowflake doilies that, they can hang on as a garland, or even, I've seen incredible, DIY kids will make like placemats for Thanksgiving. Now, as parents, have to be okay with these might not be as glamorous as the crate barrel.
It's true. We must surrender that. And we
formal,
do. We have to work at that sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I say it because it's true. Hold your breath a little bit and let the let the paper mache, placemat be part of Grandma and Grandpa's, Thanksgiving celebration. But man, that they get to see their art on display and get to participate in that is really sweet. So those are some ways. I wonder, as we start to close up on time, Savannah, do we have any questions that our presenter might have time for? One or two questions?
Yes, we do have a couple of questions. This is a question I actually get quite often as we get closer to camp and when the theme is announced. But the question is, do campers need to bring costumes up to camp?
Great question. Sure. On our packing list, we do publicize the theme, and so kids are welcome to bring, we always have a good 80s dance party at some point, some decades dance party, so they could always bring something like that, or they're welcome to bring, if they've got that one perfect costume that they even helped to make, that relates to the theme, then they're absolutely welcome and encouraged to bring that. But no camper needs needs to bring a costume. So if it brings their heart, delight, then absolutely. But no need to, go out and, buy a bunch of costumes or anything. At camp, we have a magical land called the costume closet. And it is like the biggest, it's the biggest costume box that you could ever imagine. It's a walk-in, and there are costumes throughout the years, more than enough to supply for their camp needs. So we've got the costume closet. You don't need to go out and buy or get a bunch of costumes to bring, but if there's a special costume, then they're welcome to bring that or any other prop that they're really excited about, as long as it kind of fits in a duffel bag.
As long as it fits in there luggage.
Yeah.
Well, that was a great answer. I love the costume closet. I love it now, and I loved it then. It's a great magical place. And then just another question, and I'll kind of combo it with another one. So you talked about how, we have kids that come from different backgrounds and want to experience imagination, but it can be challenging, especially if you are an older camper at YSSC. So why or how can YSSC help our older campers tap into that silliness to enjoy the creativity and the imagination that maybe younger campers are quick to pick up on?
That's a great question. Well, like that story I already, mentioned about how our older kids engage sometimes more readily than we anticipate. I actually think that in an environment where this is what we all do, that we all just dive in. Teenagers don't often want to be the unique one, singled out. But if my whole cabin is, got bandanas on, and we're going to be doing a cowboy theme at flag raising, I don't want to be left out. And I just think that positive peer pressure, and also maybe some fun competition with, decorating the cabin for a cabin cleanup contest. I think that it just sweeps us in. And then it's on our staff to be able to debrief and reflect with our campers to say, why was that so fun? And what are other ways we can bring that into our life? What did we learn from that? And could we maybe take that lightheartedness home to our family, to our team, to our younger siblings? I do think they get swept up.
Right.
Would you agree?
Yeah, and it's we're all doing it together. And the gift of camp is nothing's really uncool. Like it's a gift where kids get to come and just be silly, and none of it's uncool. They're not so worried about, especially a few days in when they've gotten really adjusted and acclimated, they're not so worried about their how they're being perceived, because they're all present together. That's also part of the leaving behind technology. That's an easier thing to do when they're not so engaged with platforms that remind them of their the perception and all of that. But I'd say even coming home, how do you capitalize that with maybe your 15-year-old that isn't quite as ready to do the family imagination antics? One, try it, give it, just see what happens. You might be surprised, especially if maybe you tie it to something where they're remembering that they have done this before and enjoyed it. Remember your time at camp, or even at school there's Spirit Week and they're all dressing up. So, remember that time. Oh man, let's bring that to our family. And then especially if they've got some younger siblings too, invite them into some of the leadership process of that. What do you think we could do? And if it's theirs to own for maybe younger siblings or neighbor kids or something like that, you might actually see some of that ownership take place rather than them feeling maybe young because they're being lumped in with younger kids. So try giving them a role in it, in a leadership or a charge, and you might be surprised by their willingness to engage. Those are some ideas.
I think I would also add, for those kids for whom wearing a costume just is not a place they're going to go, that's absolutely
Mhm.
fine. But their imagination, their muscle of strategic thinking and creativity up here can really play out beautifully
Mhm.
in a space like camp or at home, where they
Mhm.
came up with the idea for the skit, or they reverse engineered the perfect way to do KP better,
Yes.
or they came up with a strategic plan to grab those flags
Mhm.
during our capture the flag outpost game. So imagination can happen up here, even if it's not worn in a
Mhm.
costume. It all counts. It all develops those life
Right.
skills. So we wouldn't want any kiddo to feel
Mhm.
intimidated by it, but we want every camper to engage at the level that that is their sweet spot.
Yeah, yeah, really saying, don't be afraid if it looks a little different than, maybe the full, clown nose. And it might need to look a little different
Yeah.
for each one of your kids that are wired differently. And the good news is there is more than enough imagination to go around for every temperament and
Yeah.
style and personality. So yeah, thank you, Savannah. Was there any other questions, or is that wrapping us up?
Is wrapping us up. I think
Okay,
All right.
great,
nailed it. Good
wonderful.
job.
Well, thank you guys for joining us and being thoughtful participants. Oh yeah, should we
gotta
finish
close
off?
with our cautions. Okay.
Thank you for joining us for another Mornings on the Porch. We hope that it's been a thoughtful, dare I say, creative space for
There
you
you go.
to be a part of. And so we want to invite you to our next Mornings on the Porch. It's going to be November 29th. And it's going to be wrapping us up for the year as we head into the holidays. We know that there's lots on our plates, and so we'll be wrapping up. That will be our final one for the year, and then we'll kick back up again in the new year. So stay tuned for the January invite, but the next one is November 29th, and we are going to be talking about, especially around the holidays, cultivating gratitude and generosity in our campers. And what that looks like for you at home. So we hope to see you there. And until then, have a wonderful Halloween. Dust off those wonderful costumes, and we'll see you in November.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes.
Bye-bye.